They're selling our people short, man. Get this, wear this, have this, drive this.
All my entrepreneurs, all my hustlers, do not think that you're the only one that's having a hard time, okay? I'm having a hard time at my...
We rewind time to that exact second when the studio doors burst open and those blinding spotlights bathed the set of Yon Love, Fix My Life, because that, right there, is where every electrifying heartbeat of this saga takes root. We remember the static in the air, that charged silence of a live audience desperate for redemption, colliding with the cold mechanical buzz of production rigs. But what none of them realized, they were seconds away from watching an ambush masquerading as healing. We still see it clearly, DMX walking in, chain swinging, eyes scanning, searching for peace, not knowing he was stepping dead center into a ratings snare spun by OWN, and, by proxy, the empress of daytime dominance herself, Oprah Winfrey. You could feel the tension thicken your throat as the cameras zoomed in, capturing every twitch, every flicker of pain, waiting for that moment where raw truth would combust into headline-making chaos.
Why we never talk?
Can't talk to you.
What?
Because of all you've done.
Loving essence.
What do you mean? Like,
Loving essence. Why don't you sit down? And that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk now.
I watched from this to here. You know, I just wanted to, teach you the stuff if I was supposed to teach you.
Can't stop replaying the exact moment when Yon tilted her head ever so calmly, signaling the first question, a question that veered so sharply off the agreed path that we could almost see DMX's guard slam right back into place. He had walked in expecting a raw but focused conversation about his complicated history with women, a difficult dialogue. Yes, but one he'd accepted in the hope of finding closure with his son. But before a single word about love, reconciliation, or healing could even surface, he was ambushed with a question about substances. The shift was so sudden, so calculated, that it cracked the illusion in an instant. We remember the camera snapping to catch that flicker of disbelief in his eyes. The exact second he realized this wasn't a path to peace, it was a performance. This wasn't therapy.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm sure I made that clear. Like, even just a walk by, I love you. I mean, like, if you said, just that,
Can I hold that for you? Because you're not going to do that right now. Not right now.
You just give me a complex about smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, come on, let me hold it for you. I promise I'll give it back to you. I'll give it back
Let's do it clean.
Let's do it clean. From your son. Thank you.
It was a setup. And as he sat there, trying to hold his composure, trying not to crumble under the weight of public exposure, we could feel it through the screen, every ounce of that betrayal cutting into his spirit, into his reputation, turning his vulnerability into spectacle for the world to devour. We can still hear the echo in his voice, cracking under the weight of indignation, the same voice that once roared through growlist anthems, now forced to defend 6 months of hard-earned sobriety that producers conveniently erased from the storyline. The show, as we'd come to learn, never cared for a redemption arc. There's no viral gold in a peaceful comeback. They didn't want healing, they wanted chaos. Raw, unfiltered, combustible. And so, the trap was sprung in real time. His reunion with his son was weaponized, twisted into a dramatic interrogation that felt disturbingly choreographed. We couldn't ignore how rehearsed Xavier's lines sounded, how perfectly they pressed every emotional bruise. "You were married to my mother, your wife," he said, as if on cue, launching a confrontation that the cameras milked while conveniently ignoring the fact that DMX had been clean for half a year. It felt less like a breakthrough and more like a performance. We pictured producers off camera nodding, signaling, pushing for just one more tear, one more explosive quote. When DMX finally fired back with, "Love is unconditional," it wasn't just a defense, it was a plea for dignity. Spoken under the gaze of millions while ad execs somewhere backstage probably smiled at the tension graph peeking right on time. "Yo dad, what's up?" his son asked. There was never any challenging you. But when DMX tried to explain, his words were cut off. "Pump your brakes, brother," a voice said, not to protect him, but to direct the show's crescendo. We will never forget the moment that followed when the cameras stopped but the damage didn't. DMX stormed off set, phone pressed to his ear, shouting past craft services that the entire setup was toxic. He later told TMZ, "Set the whole thing up to make me look bad for ratings." That quote, stripped of profanity, rang louder than anything edited into the final cut. It was the moment we realized this wasn't a one-off betrayal. It was a calculated spectacle. As we dug deeper, whispers emerged. This wasn't just bad production, it was sabotage. A quiet campaign by OWN, just as streaming algorithms were resurfacing DMX's legacy to a new generation. Insiders claimed a PowerPoint deck had even pitched his breakdown as a must-see cultural moment, language specifically crafted to seduce advertisers. The revelation chilled us. Was Oprah's empire actively working to keep hip-hop's raw voices trapped in outdated tropes while gifting primetime grace to squeaky clean celebrity brands? The suspicion only deepened as we remembered 50 Cent once saying Oprah was completely against everything in my music. A sentiment echoed when Seal's own viral accusation pointed in the same direction. The pattern was clear. The stage was never built for healing. It was built for control, and someone made damn sure the cameras never missed a tear. Oprah surely knew about Harvey Weinstein's predatory legacy long before the headlines made denial impossible, yet chose silence itself became untenable. We couldn't shake Rose McGowan's blistering post, calling Oprah as fake as they come, for flashing red carpet smiles beside men mired in abuse scandals, while publicly wearing the mask of a champion for survivors. That moment didn't just call out hypocrisy, unlocked something deeper. This wasn't just about one betrayal. It revealed a blueprint, one that elevates polished redemption arcs while suffocating the raw, unfiltered truths that don't fit the brand. We carry that file of receipts right back to DMX, clawing toward a rebirth 6 months clean, focused, rebuilding, in the studio. Maybe even on the brink of one of hip-hop's most powerful comebacks. But OWN didn't show that. They sliced his forward motion out of the narrative and stitched in recycled courtroom footage instead. They weren't selling recovery, they were selling regression. They didn't want triumph, they wanted tears. And as we watched him try to speak, only to be interrupted with, "Are you high right now, man?" we realized the goal was never understanding, it was agitation. That same editorial sleight of hand started to echo across other corners of Oprah's media empire. We couldn't ignore how swiftly the machine moved to spotlight DMX's pain, while voices in her circle stayed eerily silent as allegations mounted against figures like Sean Diddy Combs. Only when video surfaced, only when the noise reached fever pitch, did anchors start reading the headlines they'd once ignored? Why do some gates of scrutiny swing open only after society kicks them in? Meanwhile, artists like DMX are dragged into the light the second a single tear promises engagement. That's not healing, it's harvesting. We started tracing this pattern back, questioning if this divide was by design. Was there really a media line between safe for Oprah and too raw for prime time? It's a theory we can't prove, but the evidence glares. JC's evolution into a business icon is celebrated coast to coast, while artists like DMX get frozen in their darkest hour and looped for daytime consumption. And when we dug further, the trail led us to the haunting case of Joe Odadeus, of God the so-called healer Oprah once elevated, only for courts to later expose him as a serial predator. Her team issued a vague sympathy statement, but the damage was already global. No answers, no accountability. Just another retreat from a once glowing endorsement. It paints a chilling pattern. Polished predators given stages, while rough-edged survivors are broken down on camera for clout. Oprah Winfrey, you know what you need to do, someone once said, and stop hiding behind what you call negative comments. We keep circling back to that reunion scene between DMX and his son, not because it brought healing, but because it revealed the price of emotional truth in a world that only values it when it trends. It all encapsulates everything insidious about exploitative television: the calculated ambush, the emotional engineering, the storytelling that cuts truth to fit a predetermined arc. We now suspect that producers allegedly coached DMX's son to demand sobriety on camera, knowing full well it would trigger the kind of paternal guilt that drives ratings. They ignored the fact that father and son had already met off camera, discussed boundaries, and taken steps toward healing. Instead, we picture the tearful pauses repeated for different angles, the authentic dialogue sliced down for pacing, the hushed whispers from crew, "We need more emotion," echoing just offset. In post-production, they shaved away the warmth, the real tenderness, the genuine attempts at connection. What remained was a distorted image of a father in denial, not a man wrestling imperfectly but sincerely with change. Imagine the respect that could have blossomed if the network had shown even a moment of patience. DMX had just completed a faith-based rehab program. He was journaling, meditating, and writing songs with a depth rarely seen in commercial hip-hop songs that confronted trauma, not glorified it. But none of that made the cut. Instead, they wrapped his past around his neck like a blinking neon sign, while his hopeful present was buried on the cutting room floor. Ratings soared, his spirit cratered, and we wonder aloud what the ripple effect looked like once millions logged off, newly convinced that DMX would never escape his demons. Did radio programmers shy away from his new single? Did sponsors back out of tour deals? Did loved ones feel the sting of fresh humiliation as viral memes reduced private pain into public fodder? The damage likely dwarfed any half-hearted apology the network may have issued after the fact. And when we follow the echoes, the double standard becomes impossible to ignore. The same media machine that tore down DMX once handed mics to powerful men accused of darker offenses and gave them redemptive arcs. We watched Oprah walk red carpets, with Harvey Weinstein for years, and only when reporters detonated Hollywood's wall of silence did the inner circle retreat. We saw a documentary dissect Michael Jackson's legacy before his appeals even finished. Yet somehow, there's never been an hour-long Oprah special confronting the executives whose misconduct was buried beneath NDAs and settlements. The imbalance is stunning. 50 Cent once called Oprah's audience elderly white women, after she rejected his lyrics and refused him a seat on her couch. He later admitted he only wanted her approval for his grandmother's sake. When that validation was denied, he embraced defiance. Maybe that story foretold what DMX was up against, how raw hip-hop would never be fully accepted and sanitized. Self-congratulatory spaces. His saga makes the dissonance painfully visible. An artist asked to bare his soul, only to have his vulnerability weaponized for mid-season sweeps. Even Dave Chappelle's cryptic remarks sparked conspiracy theories that he had exposed Oprah. As a handler, the claim was false. But the viral spread revealed a public desperate to uncover the hidden hands pulling strings behind the screen. And when we overlay that hunger for truth with what actually happened to DMX, lured under false pretenses, ambushed on camera, and left to pick up the shattered pieces of his image, the suspicion doesn't feel like tinfoil anymore. It feels like smoke from a fire still burning. We revisit Oprah's philanthropic legacy, the South African Academy scandal, the unanswered questions, the critics who claim her advocacy is selective at best. We hear Seal's voice asking, if the Weinstein rumors were everywhere, how could such a powerful insider miss them? And we compare that with the brutal on-air interrogation DMX faced over issues he was already confronting in real life, through therapy, through faith, through music. The contrast is glaring. As DMX once said himself, everybody that loves me, everybody that knows me is just waiting for a phone call saying I'm dead. That quote hits like a siren because he knew the world was watching his struggle as spectacle, not transformation. And it's not just music. When Monique dared to challenge pay disparities and call out selective silence, she too was cast as difficult rather than principled. The formula repeats. Polish is praised, pain is packaged, and the voices that refuse to be branded get buried under the weight of narratives they didn't write. And that, right there, is why DMX's story wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a warning. When Monique spoke out against pay disparities and named names Oprah, Lee Daniels, she wasn't applauded as a whistleblower. She was blackballed, rebranded as difficult, turned into a Hollywood cautionary tale instead of a truth-teller exposing systemic bias. That's the pattern. Speak too loudly, demand equity, and watch the narrative shift now. You're the problem. DMX didn't show up with contracts or demands. He walked in hoping for connection, for a conversation that might soften old wounds. But unpredictability sells, and OWN packaged his pain at a premium, the human cost. Insiders later whispered that his bond with his son became even more strained, mended after filming. Imagine trusting a network's promise of reconciliation, only to leave with fresh scars, replayed forever in comment sections and reaction memes. That's not therapy. That's entertainment, cannibalizing intimacy. We remember DMX gritting through his teeth, trying to stay composed, saying, "This is my child." And now we finally unveil what most viewers never see. The Cloak and Dagger playbook behind the scenes, pre-production forms disguised as care. Promising on-set mental health support, but that professional often doubles as a production advisor, making sure breakdowns stay on schedule. Intake interviews are mined for trauma centers. Clauses muzzle truth. We believe DMX signed one, but his fury overrode caution, pushing him to speak out anyway. How many others stayed silent, scared of legal backlash, stronger than their thirst for justice? Think of the rising singer whose tears became promo material. The actor coaxed into confessing relapse, only to be ghosted by casting calls while his pain looped online. DMX may be the most visible casualty, but he's far from the only one. He said it himself, "I've never in my life had to talk to a woman like that, someone I respect, like an auntie." It wasn't right. So let's leave you with this final pulse-pounding thought. If OWN could bait DMX with promises of healing, and instead broadcast his humiliation, how many more hidden edits, manipulated storylines, and emotionally weaponized cuts lurk behind our favorite uplifting segments? Share your theories. Clash in the comments. Feed the debate, because the next target may already be sitting in a green room, holding on to hope. Trusting the spotlight will lead to salvation until the cameras roll and the betrayal begins. Until we spill the next cup of tea, stay bold, stay skeptical, and hold tight to your truth. We'll be watching, exposing, and narrating every twist right here.